at 6:02 p.m. Kraft,
Here.
Stoll,
Here.
Fanouken. I'm sorry, Fanouken, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Here.
Lazinski,
Here.
Pure not.
Here.
If you would, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you are joining us tonight, thanks for being with us tonight. On behalf of the Board of Education, I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. To our wonderful students, our staff, and our families. All of you have worked tremendously hard and have achieved incredible feats I bet you never believed you could achieve. We have encountered so many tremendously selfless, giving, hardworking people that not only held themselves up in the face of adversity, but they held up others and they held up the school district. Thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for dialoguing with us. Thank you for working with us. Happy Thanksgiving. We've all had an opportunity, if I may, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
I have the motion by Lazinski, seconded by Fanouken. Lazinski,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Pure not,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We've had an opportunity to review the minutes from previous meetings. All in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
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 Those that do not, say no. Minutes are approved. And at this time, we're going to move to informative reports and recognitions. And we are going to recognize a number of members of our staff. Dr. Goggin, shall I turn that over to you?
Yes, they're not going to be on the screen today, but we do have, so every year we go through a nomination process for a Excellence in Teaching Award and Excellence in Classified Service Award. This year is no different. Had a lot of really good candidates. What was really nice to see is that as we go through something like this, people are really appreciative of each other. They really recognize what everybody is doing and take the time to nominate people. So we had some really good nominees this year. And so in the teaching ranks, we have Kim DeCunzo, who was selected for the Excellence in Teaching. She's an elementary school teacher. And really, this particular year has accepted even more than what you would expect in a hybrid model, expanded to take on additional students in regard to gifted. Just a lot of fantastic things that Kim's doing. We do want to, she's not on here tonight, but we do want to bring her back and recognize her for this. And then the other one is Mark Bender, who is a special ed assistant at the elementary school as well. And he is the award recipient for Excellence in Classified Service, goes above and beyond for our students with disabilities who he works with, and his colleagues really recognized him in that regard as well. We also are doing a team award, and Todd, Dave's not on, is he? Because I know we were going to have Dave talk about these folks. But you have the custodial food service and maintenance to be able to do the things that we've been doing with our school lunch program, to be able to keep our places clean. If you've been into any of our buildings, you will see somebody walking around with a spray bottle. When people leave, they'll be through disinfecting just nightly. And so they've been doing a wonderful job. And even our maintenance crew, not only keeping everything running, but building extra plexiglass barriers and all the different things that we need in order to keep our schools clean and safe. We had to take a moment and recognize the custodial food service and maintenance folks and really put them in a team excellence award and thank them for everything that they're doing. So those are the awards, and if the board has anything they would like to add, I'll pause for a moment.
Well, certainly congratulations to Mrs. DeCunzo, Mr. Bender, the entire staff involved with custodial food service and maintenance. I know that we've had an opportunity to see all of those in action. They do tremendous work, so congratulations.
Didn't realize I was still muted.
Oh.
So do you want me to go into my report now, Mr. Kraft? Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to go into, I took some time and met with some parents who were representing athletic sports or athletic activities who were concerned about putting winter sports on pause. Kind of where did that come from? What's going on? And so I did take some time and meet with them. We met probably, well, I think we met at 4, so we met for about an hour and a half. So I'm not going to take an hour and a half here, but I will go through and give you some highlights to the conversation that we had. So if I can share my screen, I'll just go through the presentation that I went through to talk about a little bit, and let me make sure you can see this correctly. My screens just went blank. So
We can see.
you can see the Westlake City Schools, wonderful.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to do is in talking to them, I wanted to talk about do some rumor control and some of the items that we're hearing. And one is that, the reason for the pause was an agreement with the teachers and the MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, which is an extension of our contract. When our contract with a certain bargaining unit doesn't cover certain areas, we create an addendum type of thing, and it's called an MOU. And we did do that with both the OPSI, which is our classified staff, as well as our teaching staff. And one of the perceptions that was out there was that there was something in that agreement that would make athletics stop when instruction stopped or something like that. And that's not accurate. The only item that is in that MOU in regard to extracurriculars is how we're paying, how we're, if, and actually you might even have some of that on our agenda today, is when you have a sport, we've agreed to how we'll split up the payments, because if you go through a certain part of the season, you get half, and then another part of the season, you get 3/4, and then when you complete it, you would get the whole thing. So in regard to extracurriculars, that's really it. Then, the other question was about when it comes to, purple. And so we do have something in the MOU that says if we go in purple, we will do virtual instruction. Now, that became a significant piece of heartburn earlier in the school year, because we had a situation where we had an asterisk and we only had one case. And so there was a lot of angst over that. But one of the things that we've noticed as we've gone through it is back when we were actually creating this document, we were led to believe by officials that purple would be really, really bad. I mean, purple, your hospitals are full and cases are to an unmanageable point. And what we're finding is that what we believed in summer is actually going to be what purple is. So, we thought purple was going to happen when we had minimal cases, and now we have a tremendous amount of cases throughout Northeast Ohio, and we're still in red. As a matter of fact, I think we only have 4 indicators currently in Cuyahoga County. And so it's that is in there. That's something that I believe is actually going to be the right call, where, because in order to hit purple, your hospitals have to be full, your cases have to be a certain point. And if we really hit that range, then it would not be wise to have the folks in. Our original angst, like I said before, was when that potential was there, but earlier, but we're not seeing that happening unless it really needs to happen. So just a couple clarifying things, that this is not anything that's driven by any type of agreement or any pressure or anything like that. So just to go through, why, so what is the thought behind it? And, oh, there we go. So a couple different variables that I'll point in here is it has changed from fall. In the information we're receiving, whether it's briefings from public health authorities, or if it's, as you're watching the news, it's something where spread is happening. We are getting a very significant amount of spread. It's happening more and more. I liked this graphic from the Plain Dealer yesterday, where they showed October 1st, this is what it looked like, and now in November 19th, this is what it looks like. And I think it gives you a good understanding of where we are right now. So the other thing we look at is the amount of quarantines that are happening. So we have one of the things that's happening throughout is not only are we seeing spread, but we're also seeing more and more quarantines happening with schools that are either in our conference or we're going to play in a sport. And one of the things we accept is quarantine is going to have to be a part of what we do. We don't have the mindset that if we pause or we do anything differently, we'll never have any quarantines. But when you look at the amount of transmission that happening, you're seeing it in more and more within the quarantines that are going on. So that raised a level of concern as well. And then there's the public health authority guidance. Now, one of the things that I want to mention is that, as we've gone through the year, we have worked a lot with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, but we've also started getting information additionally from the Lorain County Board of Health, and especially when it comes to sports, because in the SWC you have both Cuyahoga County schools and Lorain County schools. So we are getting more and more information and being able to sit in on conversations with that Board of Health as well. And what's kind of interesting is when you do talk to the two entities, and this is kind of how I explained it, is that if you were to draw a Venn diagram, you will see that there's a lot of ways in which the Lorain County Board of Health is approaching things differently than what you would see the Cuyahoga Board of Health approaching things. And you can notice the differences. But one of the things that we heard very clearly from both the Cuyahoga and Lorain boards of health was the concern for winter sports, and especially as we're here with college students coming home in Thanksgiving weekend. And that's been consistent. That's been something that hasn't been different as well. And the other thing that actually just came out, we talked about on Friday, but came out today, was that not only are cases spiking, but the data is worse than what was reported on Friday. And that's one of the things the governor said today, is you saw such a big jump because people weren't able to get everything in the computers. They weren't able to get all that data in. And now that all this data is in, and you're seeing an even bigger jump from last week than what we saw. And then even the boards of health are in a meeting with the governor today. It was even documented in the Chronicle, where Lorain County Commissioner was saying that they were going to be presenting to the governor today. And actually I have I can't see it on my screen, but there was a quote in saying that, are we going to take this seriously, and how we go through there. And I took this information and I was very concerned. I was very concerned going into a potential holiday weekend, where you put students in a competition, and then you put them at their Thanksgiving table. And it was, my opinion that was not the right path to take. And when you look at it, and looking at the schools, so Lorain County, actually 9 out of 14 schools paused. You have Lorain, Keystone, Clearview, Columbia, Firelands, Wellington, Oberlin, Brookside. Elyria, I put TBD because I think they've paused through, I think this week, and they're going to make more specific decisions about where they go from there. When you look at Cuyahoga County and other larger schools, you do have Solon, Chagrin Falls. Berea is the only other SWC school. Aurora, Brooklyn, Euclid, Bedford, Mentor, Wickliffe, Willoughby, Eastlake, Twinsburg, Garfield Heights, Shaker Heights, and Lakewood today said that they're doing a brief pause as well. My point in going through this, and so in talking to this about with the parents who I met with today, there were a couple things that really stood out to me. One was an overarching feeling that the term pause was in essence saying cancel. This is step one to not getting to play or do anything at all. The other, and then the impact that had on kids, where you see one SWC school on this list, but then the question is, it's so frustrating when we're one of the only SWC schools that are on pause right now, and so I think that's big parts of feedback that I got today. And we have a superintendent's meeting tomorrow with the Southwest Conference, and one of the things that I've shared with this group is, I think we're going to be getting more information tomorrow, and as I go through it, I think we should work together as a league. And so, as we look at the conference, I don't want Westlake to be the outlier in this, because we are going to be playing for conference championships and different things like that. I do believe you're going to see an adjustment. I think you're going to see a pause in some ways, and even as Joe and I talked about it earlier, we may take an approach with a scalpel and say that we're going to do this for this sport, this for that sport, and take it through there. So I appreciated the feedback that I got from them, and I'm, like I said, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow as a conference, and then hopefully this isn't a Westlake only decision or Berea only decision or different thing like that, but we come to something in consensus as a conference, because that's not something that we necessarily had on Friday. And so it was my comfort zone. I will tell you that, when I looked at kind of the information, in my opinion, when we had a situation where the information was so pressing that the boards of health were meeting with the governor on Monday, and I'm sitting with the information on Friday, I felt that the right thing to do was to recommend to my board that we do a pause. And I still don't have an issue with that decision, but I am open to having our decision be consistent with our SWC colleagues. So that's in essence what we talked about today, and I will pause and let the board ask any questions they may have. Joe.
May I ask you to forward that presentation to us?
Sure, absolutely.
And, you've been very good communicating with us, and I assume you'll continue that, especially with that meeting tomorrow.
Sure.
And any conclusions from the families you met with today?
No, I think it was. I think the big takeaways that I had was, the feeling like, why are we doing this when other teams in our conference aren't? I thought I mentioned it to where it's like, well, why would it be any better later? After Christmas and those type of things. And those were let me look at my notes. So kind of go through. I think those were big takeaways that I got from it, and I think that's what we had. Now, the one thing I warn is that I don't know if tomorrow's meeting will produce all the answers. I do know that it will be a conversation that we're going to have, and I don't know if we're going to walk away with solutions. I hope so, but I don't want people to be sitting there saying, well, I'm going to find out at the end of the day tomorrow, what's going on with everything. But I think we can work together as a league and figure it out. Yep. Any other questions, Mr. Finucane?
Can you just clarify, are the sports teams, are they still practicing?
Yes, and so we're still having them practice, and so the question is, why would you have them practice and not play? And that's one of the questions that I got. And it's something where you do find that balance, and you do balance risk in a sense where it's different in taking. What we're finding is, you definitely have something happen within your team, but there was an SWC team that played basketball this weekend, and now their team is was exposed, and now their team's in quarantine for 2 weeks. So it could be within your team, it could be an exposure from another team, and so you have that when you're out with other teams, then what you're doing is you're multiplying the amount of exposure that you have. We do focus on the wellness of students. We understand that having them in structured environments and having them inside a practice where the coach can actually mitigate risk. So not only are they together, but they can run drills, they can do it, they can manage it. When you're in a game, the game's the game. You're going to play it and how it's structured to be played. But inside of practice, we're able to keep the kids active, keep the kids social, keep them connected, and be able to mitigate that risk at the same time. So, what I'll say, and one of the things that I told the team, the folks tonight, is, I'm open. It's something where I don't have an issue. I still don't have an issue with the decision that I presented. However, I'm open to feedback from my league colleagues and others on what the best path moving forward is so that we're consistent for everybody. Yes, John.
I know it is all about mitigating the risk. And there's obviously different things that we could do, make decisions on to mitigate that risk. Have we ever given the thought of just having the students participate in their sports and just not have any spectators, or at least spectators, say on our end, or maybe that's even an SWC understanding that could come about to, again, it would help mitigate, but it may not be the best thing, but it would help reduce people confined in one particular area.
So John, one of the parents brought that up tonight, and that was, that's something that if I know my counterparts in the SWC, I think everything's on the table. And at the end of the day, and I'll share another thing that was shared with me, which really struck me, is when you look at different, let's call it senior classes who have to deal with the COVID pandemic, and you had your seniors from last year got 3/4 of their year. They got homecoming, they got to do a lot, they got winter sports, and really it was March that it hit. And you have the seniors this year where they're not getting all the things that the activities and everything that any senior class has received. They're actually feeling more of a brunt of it than what last year's seniors have felt so far. And so what we want to do, and the reason I bring that up is, the interesting part was, I really used the term pause as pause, but then even as emails I got, like I told the parents, I got that in quotes, pause, almost like, and the way I interpreted it was like when you were a kid and you asked your parents for something and they said maybe, and you knew it was no, and so they felt pause was the end. And I think the other part was pause was the beginning of pause, suspended, and canceled. And so this is just step one, and to be able to map out how are we going to do it, because at the end of the day we want to get these kids this experience, whether it's a full pause now to try and do this, or if it's paused in this area, but kind of like in the fall, where when we did pause some sports, but we allowed, I think, tennis and golf to continue because of the fact that there was the distancing and they're outside, and it was the nature of the sport helped us do that a little bit more. So those are the conversations that we'll have and go through it. And then as soon as we get to some sort of a resolution, we can work through it. So I don't know. My answer right now is, it could be to the 4th, it could be to the 30th, it could be to a certain date for some sports and another one for others, and we got to work through those as best as we can and as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Yep, Joe.
Sounds like you built some goodwill and avenues of communication. I know that you brought up Scalpel, and any other thoughts on Scalpel? And I'm assuming that that timeline is going to be communicated like you've communicated in the past.
Yeah, and even asked about that. So one of my questions was about the communication, and I think you're going to have a lot of people kind of sitting on the edge of their seat and saying, how'd the meeting go? And the comparison I use, sometimes when you go to a doctor's appointment, you expect to get a diagnosis, and they just say, we're going to run some tests. So you kind of walk out and you're a little disappointed that you didn't get the answer. You just end up with some more questions. So I'm not making, and I didn't make a promise, and I can't make a promise that I'm going to have a meeting tomorrow and all of your answers are going to be resolved. but I can even send something saying, we met as a conference, and give any kind of update, and to be able to do it, because you don't want to get ahead of it to where you say, well, this is my interpretation of what the conference is going to do. And the other part that I mentioned is there's only so much superintendents get involved with. So, there could be some overarching decisions or some marching orders that we give to athletic directors, who then have to figure out, if it's an SWC based schedule. So let's say you go through and say, we're going to be dealing with quarantines and pauses, or however it ends up working out. So we need to focus on SWC first. How are we going to get the conference champion determined? How are we going to, play within our conference and worry about independence later? Those are going to be more athletic director type of logistics to work out, as opposed to superintendent. So, we'll have a conversation about, how we move forward. Westlake will, stay in line with the Southwest Conference and work forward towards that.
Thank you.
Yep, Bob.
I do like the scalpel approach. I think you have to look at it sport by sport. And it certainly makes sense to look at the conference as a whole. So I agree with the approach.
Yeah, and it creates a whole nother thing, because then be like, well, how come, this sport gets this and that sport gets that? And we understand that this is one of those situations where every problem you think you solve begins another one. And it just, then, once you realize what you're going to do here, then you got to figure, like John said, are you going to bring in fewer parents or parents at all? And how can you do this? And so we do have to work through that and do so pretty quickly. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else, Dr. Goggin, that you want to report on in your report?
I do not. I could just I'll go through my recommendations when it's my time.
Sure, we'll do. Mr. Hopkins, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft. Briefly, I'll just go over our audit, where we are with our audit for fiscal year 2020. Although we have COVID going on and the pandemic, it has not stopped our audit process. It is certainly different this year, and we do not have our auditors necessarily on site like we've had them in the past on site, but we've been doing more things electronically, working with the auditors. We're wrapping up what's called our gap conversion. We use an independent certified public auditor. Julian and Grube is the company. They're doing our gap conversion right now, and the auditors of state's office does the formal audit, both of the gap conversion and also other aspects of the audit. The gap conversion is required to be done by the end of November, and we are on schedule for that to happen this week. And we expect the audit, which is required to be done by the end of December. We're shooting for roughly around December, I think the 18th, the Friday before Christmas is our target right now to get that wrapped up and submitted. So at this time, I'm not aware of any issues. My staff has been very good working with our auditor's office in order to get all of their requests met, and we're working through it nicely. So that's where we are currently. Other than that, for a report, I would just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I know it will look very, very different this year for everybody, but there is a lot to be grateful for still. So happy Thanksgiving to each one of you.
Thank you.
If it so pleases the board, I can go into my recommendations if you'd like. All right. So I do have, I think it's 4 of them that I have on tonight. The first one was tabled at the last board meeting. It is a resolution to authorize an amendment to the compensation agreement between the City of Westlake and the Westlake City School District. B, I have, or 4B is a resolution to approve FY21 permanent appropriations. You'll see with the documents I've attached to that resolution, this is really only an increase of about $300 to our budget, but we do have some money moves as people are spending their money different than what was submitted as their plan a few months ago. I do have C. C is our resolution to authorize the treasurer to return in advance. This is the Stadium Turf Fund. This is our contract with UH for naming rights. The payment was received, and I'd like to return the money back to general fund. And then D, I have a resolution to authorize the execution of change orders to Icon in the amount not to exceed $205,363.32. This is the final wrap up of the, I'm sorry, this is the final wrap up of the elementary school. As we've worked through everything, these change orders have been done under former authorization that the board allowed the superintendent, treasurer, and business manager to make those change orders. But I am asking for, again, a formal board approval of as it as a whole so that I can wrap it up and make my final payments on the elementary school project. Those are the four that I have. If it's okay with the board, I would ask that we do 4A separately. And then I'm fine with B, C, and D combined if the board is okay with it.
Is there a motion to approve treasurer's recommendation 4A?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Hopkins, could you, for in layman's terms, give the board an overview of what exactly a TIF is, and then again, maybe 30,000 feet, and then explain how the funds move as relates to the compensation agreement between the schools and the city?
Yeah, so a TIF agreement is a tax incremental financing agreement, which allows the city to finance public infrastructure improvements using tax collections that the business would typically pay to other entities beyond the city in property tax. So it would be what the school would normally receive or other taxing authorities. TIF agreements are often also combined with abatements. And then in this case, it's combined with a compensation agreement with the Westlake City School District. Per this TIF, which was passed by the city and agreed to by the Board of Education in 2011, the board receives 25% of what the taxable value is through the payments that the city receives from the property owners. So the city, my understanding is the city collects those payments. We get 25%, and then they use the remainder of those of that money to pay those, I'm assuming, bonds that they took out to finance the public infrastructure upgrades that they did through the Crocker Park area. So that's kind of the overarching view of it.
And I'm going back on memory here of reading the compensation agreement. The city will collect payments from AG, American Greetings, and Crocker Park LLC in exchange for that abatement. Is that right?
Well, yeah, Crocker Park and American Greetings, my understanding is they have an abatement on this as well, so they pay a reduced value. So whatever value that they do pay on their property taxes, the city collects and then again pays the bonds with it and then passes on a portion of it to the school district.
And if by chance there's any shortfall in payment, say AG or Crocker Park LLC doesn't pay their property taxes, that reduced amount, we would not receive our payment from the city then.
You know, that's a good question. We do have minimums built into there. So I would, look to argue that we would have a minimum value that we're guaranteed regardless, but it may result with a lien being placed against the property owner, just like anyone else who wouldn't pay their taxes, their property taxes.
Right, but again, we're relying on the city to pay us for the property taxes as relates to the TIF.
We are, but just remember, all property taxes, we rely on somebody else to collect them on our behalf. In most cases, and the vast majority of cases, we rely on the county to collect them on our behalf, and then they pass on the money to us. In this case, the city collects it and passes on the money to us.
Right, in exchange for the agreement that we have, or as outlined in the agreement.
As outlined in the agreement, correct.
Right. So hypothetically, if the city decided not to make a payment to us, what would be our path to recover those funds, short of going to legal counsel and trying to find a judgment?
I think in any situation, again, whether we look at it from the city or from the county, if the collector of the tax money would not pass it on to us like we're entitled to under this case, the agreement, or under law, we would have to involve legal counsel and go through the court system to recover it.
And I have to believe that as relates to any time in your history or our history, that the county has never not given us the money that they said they were going to be giving us. Would that be a good assumption?
Actually, no. Remember, annually we have delinquent taxes from the county that the county is unable to collect. So we can have large number of delinquent taxes. In my former district, at one point, I had a company who owed me nearly $1 million in back property taxes that they just did not pay over a long period of time. And that's, again, if the county can't collect it, they can't pass it on to us. So we often deal with delinquent tax cases, and that's on really on an annual basis.
That wasn't American Greetings, was it?
I would prefer not to say. It was in a different community.
That's okay. That's okay. It is public record, though, I'm sure. So, well, again, my biggest concern really is the level of control that we're giving to the city. As of today, the contract would expire. The current agreement would expire in roughly 20 years. In 20 years, the agreement goes away, and the schools would get 100% of the approved property taxes directly from the county. If we extend this another 30 years, we would get 100% of the property taxes, which is what we would get anyway if the agreement expires. But we would continue to rely upon the city to pay us those payments twice a year out till 2071. And even 20 years from now, none of us are going to be on the board. Maybe Liz, but none of us are going to be on the board. Todd, you still might be sitting there. You're a young guy. Dr. Goggin, I'm not sure about that. So, and at the city, the mayor, council, in 20 years, it's going to be a big changeover of all these people. So again, part of my fear is the people today that are talking about this, our group and the folks over at City Hall, we all get each other. It's a good relationship that you and Mr. Goggin have created over the last 4 or 5 years. But I don't know what the future city council or mayor is going to be in 20 years from now, let alone 40, 50 years from now. When it expires, I'll be 75. And if it extends, my God, I'll probably be the oldest person in America. So my real concern here is that control. And I think someone mentioned this to me one time, so I'm gonna just go by memory. It's better to be in control of your own money, if you can, than having a third party be in control of it. Yeah, the county collects our property tax for us, and we get what we get. Okay, they give us an estimation of what we're going to get. Sorry about that. Damn. Oh, someone got rid of the phone call. So the county will tell us, hey, this is what you could expect. And we know there's going to be a percentage of delinquents associated with that. And that's something we can easily plan for each and every year. And some years it may be up and down, but not of its significance. The city today pays us roughly $600,000 in payment.
A rough number. That's roughly correct.
Okay. And again, that's 25% of what we should be entitled to. So doing reverse math, I'm going to say all things being equal, it would be at least $1.5 million more associated with if there was no TIF today. or if there was a TIF, I should say, but the schools were made whole. Instead of getting 25%, we would be getting 100%. So there's $1.5 million that a previous board of ours decided that that was okay for American Greetings and Crocker Park to not pay taxes on. Okay, those are dollars that would go right into our general fund, our operating fund, $1.5 million. And now we're going to probably have to go out to the voters come this fall and ask for an increase in an operating levy. I mean, we haven't had one in years. And I think there's a lot of validity as to why we're asking for it. But how do I explain, some of the decisions that were made in past boards without trying to rectify maybe some of the bad decisions that were made in previous boards? That's one of the challenges I'm having here. But again, it's the control, because say 10 years from now, and that 600,000 is up to $1 million, which is great. It's still only 25%, which means we'd be missing out on $3 million of potential, but we're not. So that my concern is, why give the city the control of our future? So if in 20 years it expires and we get 100% and it goes from say 1 million a year up to 3 million or 4 million a year, we're going to rely on the city to pay us that versus just getting it directly from the county. And I honestly, I have more faith that the county is going to make sure they collect it and pay us than if something happens to the future leadership of Westlake City Hall, because we have no idea who's going to be there in 20 years. So mine is, I don't want to put the decision of extending the control of our money, which would be probably $4 million for an additional 30 years, in the hands of the city, when we should be in control of our own destiny and get it directly from the county. That's my biggest issue, because I'm afraid that something may happen, with the city. Cities default in the country. Cities have very tough economic issues. By law, they have to pay us, but by law, we'd have to take them to court, get a legal judgment against them, and somehow enforce that payment. I don't think we would have to do that to the county. So again, these are my concerns as to why it's not in good interest for us to extend this. We're taking on risk as it is in the current agreement. All right. So now you're talking about extending this out to 2071, where the city's going to be in control of at least, say, $4 or $5 million of our money. And that's a lot of risk for us, yet we're doing a favor for the city. So I don't see that there's an equal exchange of consideration here. We're doing something for the city, but we're still taking on all of this risk that they're going to, in fact, honor what they say they're going to do and pay us. So for me, it's too much of a risk to place upon future school boards, and especially not being able to be in control of our own money that the voters had voted for. And that's all I have.
Further discussion?
Yes, and I know that we have better relations with the city now, but it hasn't always been that way. In the past, it was very, there was actually animosity at times. And I don't feel that when we ran our past levies, we really didn't get any support from the city. They weren't recommending that the voters vote for it. And I know in some cities, the city administrators, the city council, the mayor, they take an active part in serving on the levy committees and in actually helping to get the levies passed. So I don't feel that the city has always given the schools the support that we deserve. And yet in their advertisements for the city, they always are saying how good the schools are. And, so they're kind of like using us. I also, what's that? The bell's ringing. Is it my time up?
Never.
Okay.
You can talk all.
Okay. I agree with John when he said, I hate to think about 2071 and the school boards then saying, what the heck did, these people do to us back then? And what is the benefit to us if we, I mean, what are we getting out of this?
So I will say the reason that I have it on as my recommendation is as we look at this, I can't speak to what has happened in the past. I can speak to the experience that I've had and what I view going forward in the future. Honestly, this is a situation to where there is the benefit to the district doesn't change either way, whether it's passed or not passed. It doesn't affect the amount that these school districts will get. Under Ohio Revised Code, we would get 100% whether it's extended or not. At the end of the compensation agreement, we would get 100%. If it's not extended, if we do extend it at the end of the original compensation agreement, we would get 100% still. So there is no change in it to us at all. What it is this is a benefit to the community as a whole. And what happens is the city is able to take roughly 55% of property taxes that are paid within Westlake. Each of you that I'm looking at on the screen here pay property taxes within the city of Westlake on your own residence. And as such, the school district collects roughly 55% of that. The remainder is split up among multiple taxing authorities. That can be, the Port Authority, the Metro Parks, the city, the county. I mean, you just have different taxing authorities. And so the benefit happens is the benefit to the community, to each of the residents, to the city as a whole, as the money is collected, that extra 48%. And then the city can use that money directly for infrastructure improvements. Throughout, really, it's intended, I believe, in that area. But I think the example that I've heard in the past is all roads in Westlake lead to Crocker Park. So it could be road upgrades, it could be sewer upgrades, it could be, infrastructure upgrades throughout the community. So the community and the taxpayers benefit as a whole. The reason I'm recommending it is because, in my opinion, it does not harm the district either way. So if it does not harm the district and it's a benefit to the community and the residents, I generally will support that.
Mr. Finucane.
Mr. Hopkins, if you had two choices, one to get money directly from the city or one to get directly money from the county, being the city's a third party versus the first party, which would be the county, which would you prefer to get the money from?
Honestly, in my career, I've never had an issue collecting from either party. So, it doesn't necessarily affect me. I don't view it as a higher risk situation, especially when you look at the city of Westlake, as they're, rated higher financially than we are as a school district. So I don't view it as an increase in risk.
Although if the agreement ends in 20 years, we get the same amount of money, irregardless of path we choose. But the thing that we are doing is we continue to take the risk of not controlling those funds. And in 20 years, when this expires, that's going to be a lot of funds. I mean, today we're missing out on probably $1.5 million. So fast forward 20 years from now, and I think you could say honestly, it might be 4 or 5 million. It's not unheard of in 20 years for it probably to double in a level of appreciation. So that's $5 million, and we're only going to collect. We'll get it all, but we rely on the city to give it to us. I'm sorry, I can't see how that's equal weight versus the county. When the county collects the property tax, that's their job. That's one of the things that they do, and that they pay it. The taxpayers here pay their property taxes. All right. Right now, $1.5 million going back to American Greetings and Crocker Park in a way of abatements. Okay. Our previous board, I'm sorry, they gave away that money to local corporate citizens, and they didn't have to. Westlake is not a city, that is in desperate need of finances and money. We're not a disheveled, crumbled up city where you try to entice companies to come here to be able to, help accelerate growth and revitalization of a particular area. We're just the opposite. So that's what kills me about the previous board that made these decisions. And I know we can't do anything about it, but why perpetuate it and continue to give the city the control of our dollars versus getting them from the county? And unfortunately, we do have risk because the city gets payments from Crocker Park LLC and American Greetings. And if they fall short on some of those payments, we have to take part of that burden. And that's right inside the agreement. It's called shortfall payments. If the city doesn't get all the payments that they were supposed to, we don't get them either. And although there might be some analogies there as relates to getting them from the county and things like this, this is a lot different. So again, everyone can vote however they think. What I'm saying is the past board didn't maybe make the best decision. And I'd hate to be a compound onto that decision for a future board. And I know I've been told that, hey, this is goodwill. This is a goodwill thing. It doesn't cost the schools anything other than control. It costs us control of our money for 30 years at least $5 million. And at the end of that extra 30 years in 2071, when I'll be here, it could be 7-8 million. I mean, that's the thing. Why would we give up control of our money to the city? All right. So one last point, I hope. If this is all about goodwill, as Mrs. Lazinski said, then I would ask the mayor right now, the council president, draft a resolution for city council to say that they will, in fact, endorse our next operating levy. That the mayor will come out wholeheartedly and do it, and not just, through simple words, very straightforward in support of it. Because the last levy we had was in 2013, and it was silence. I think the only person that was in favor of it at the time was Linda Apple, and she was actually running for city council at the time. We had nobody from council president, or the mayor supported us in that effort. So unfortunately, I don't have faith that they're going to do it now, whether we pass this or don't pass this. So if we are going to extend goodwill to the city, then how about getting some of that goodwill back? It's not going to cost them anything. The city's not going to have to pay anything. But they don't want to support an operating levy for the schools because it increases taxes. And the mayor is all about keeping property taxes low. And we all are. We're all about being fiduciarily responsible for all the money that comes in. That's the issue. We're not being fiscally responsible, by letting someone else control our money after this 20 years. It just isn't. And I would put it upon the city to say, yeah, we're going to support you guys. If you say you need money for operating levy, we're going to support you. Anything short of that, there's no relationship.
Mr. Finucane, I certainly hear you loud and clear, with that. And I will speak on behalf of Dr. Goggin as well. I don't think he or I would have any problem working with the city to hopefully get an endorsement of our next property issue that the board intends to put on in this upcoming November. Or I guess next November. We're still in November here, so next November. And that's something that we will certainly work with them on. Part of the timing of the resolution tonight is under the Ohio Revised Code. They have an opportunity here in order to do the extension. It needs to be done by the end of December. And for the city council, that requires 2 readings as well. So they're waiting on approval from the school district per our compensation agreement. The law does not require us to approve an extension to the TIF. The law is very clear, and the law allows the city to extend a TIF without any input from the schools whatsoever.
Mr. Hopkins, I'm sorry to interrupt. Then why is it, does it state in the compensation agreement?
The compensation agreement has a provision in it that says that any amendments, any changes or extensions would go before the school board for approval. So the law does not require it, but the compensation, the contract does require it. And that's why we're going through this, last week or 2 weeks ago and again tonight. But the law doesn't require it. It's only the compensation agreement.
So they would be in breach of the agreement then?
Potentially.
Well, I think that's a pretty black and white answer there.
You're assuming that they would go forward without our approval.
Well,
that's
no,
why I say potentially.
Well, you're saying that the TIF can go forward no matter what.
No, what I'm saying is the law, Ohio Revised Code, allows them to extend a TIF without approval from the school district.
Okay, so then
But the compensation.
Okay, so then why do for them to be able to do that, you're saying it's part of our contract that they need our approval. So the reality is that unless they want to go fight it out, if they move forward and do the TIF themselves and say we don't need the school's approval, they would be in direct violation of our compensation agreement. I think that's right.
I think it is, and that's why they're asking you for approval.
Right. Okay. So they need our approval.
Yes, under the compensation agreement they do, but Ohio Revised Code does not require it.
Well, we're just talking about contract law then, and that they'd be in
Correct.
violation of contract law that we put together. And if they're in violation of it, then it could be thrown out, well, unless it gets resolved. So I mean, I think it's disingenuous to say that they can just go ahead and do it without us, because if they do, they're in violation of the contract. And if they're in violation of the contract and we go to the court, I would hope a judge would just throw out the whole thing. That would be fantastic.
I'm not saying that by any means. What I'm telling you is there's Ohio Revised Code, and then there's our contract. And Ohio Revised Code does not recognize a TIF extension needs to have approval by a school board. In this particular case, in this particular TIF, we have a compensation agreement that says that it would be come back before the school for approval. But I'm just pointing out that Ohio Revised Code does not make that stipulation.
Well, I guess all right. I think I'm getting a clearer understanding. So then, why don't we have the compensation agreement worded such that after 20 years, we get our payment directly from the county? If the city can do the TIF regardless of us, based on the Ohio Revised Code, that's all they want. They just want the TIF extended. Okay, that's the main issue here. So if that's the issue and they can do it without us, then why don't they just go ahead and change the agreement to reflect the fact that, yeah, look, you guys just go get your money. You'll get your money from the county. You won't get it from us. I'd be more than happy then to extend it and change it. I don't like the fact of giving control of over what will be $5 million in 20 years over to the city. I don't think any school board would trust their city to do that. I'm sorry. We're two equal branches of government here in the city. If we were one, that'd be different, but we're not. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens and to the taxpayers here to be mindful of their money and how we use it. The previous board didn't. They gave away 75% of it. So again, as it relates to, never mind. You had mentioned something earlier, and I was going to make reference to it, but now.
You said that you and Dr. Goggin would, certainly try, and you've done a terrific job of having a good relationship with the city. But unfortunately, I have been here in the past, and I don't. I can't say that I'm confident that the current council will be supportive when we go for an operating levy, because there's been too much hurt or whatever in the past. And I know the past is the past. We need to move on. But I just can't be confident that they would support us. And you've done a terrific job of creating good relations, and I appreciate that. But I'm still a little reluctant.
So I guess just to point out, to jump on that, and I'll let Todd speak to John's concerns, and I'll speak to Barb's. One of the things that I don't think one is good without the other. When we talk about how we say that the schools are a reason people would choose to live in Westlake, I would also challenge and say that the city is also a big reason why people move to Westlake. When you look at our infrastructure and even look at our neighbors and how they've grown, how the roads are maintained, how they're laid out, when you look at the rec center, when you look at the pool, when you look at all the different facilities and services that we have here. And, one of the things that I really have to point out is one big benefit we have as we talk about levies. I think we get in a conversation about, who will support what and what will they say and what kind of quote would it be and will they pass something. But, the coordinated reliance we have on each other, we are very blessed in Westlake. 1 mil, how much does 1 mil generate here in Westlake, Todd?
Nearly $1.6 million.
Okay. Do you know what 1 mil generates in Olmsted Falls? $500,000. We have one of the highest. So one of the things that we benefit from, so we should be proud of our schools, but to say that our success isn't connected to our city is and especially when you look at our levies, a huge benefit that we have is other school districts have to put 3 times the millage on their tax levies than we do. And one of the things that I appreciate as a resident is the fact that they're actually looking out to 2045 to where it's like they want to continue that infrastructure. And when Todd talks about how it benefits the community, I get it. And I get what John's saying too, when it comes to having control over it. And I'll let, Todd focus on that component, but I don't think I want to hinge things on what they would say for this and do for that, because I think we do have that inner reliance. And I do feel that if they're looking out to 2045 to make sure that they have extra monies or things set aside to continue that infrastructure, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I do think we benefit greatly. I know we benefit greatly. I will tell you, we get 3 times the money for a mill than most of the people around us. And it's not because anybody on the screen. That's generated revenue-wise, inside a city. So, we're codependent. We are serving the same people. And if we want to, talk about words in the agreement, we could do that. But, I guess I don't need that in return to where I'll pass this if you say nice things about us or do that sort of thing, because we do have that, I think, inner reliance upon each other. And this is something that I would hope, and maybe in the past, because if you talk to folks in the city, they'll probably tell stories, about certain things that school board members did, at a certain time. And then, people would talk about what's, that you can get in an argument about who did what when. And I just don't want to get tied up in that. But I don't know. I would hope that if we went to the city with something and say, can you pass this that does no harm to you, that I would be confident that they would agree to it. I am actually. Now, they may not agree with the board that they do, but I don't know. This one to me, I hope you support, and it's something that I have seen a benefit. Even something as just simple as school resource officers. I'll tell you right now, I know it's not millions of dollars, John. But I will tell you.
I'm sorry, but are we an anomaly there?
Yes. Yes, we actually are.
Of all the Southwest Conference schools,
yes,
schools on the west side,
we are 100% an anomaly, and we can fact check it to where we pay between $80,000 to $90,000 for 4 officers and a DARE officer. With their districts who pay that for 1, where they are responsible for all of it. So I think it's one where, boy, if we start keeping score, I think in the different things that we're doing, I don't know. I guess that's just that. I don't know. I think it has been good, and it, to me, if it's no harm to us, but I get the control part, and I'll let Todd talk to that. But I just, that's my opinion on it, and I'll pause from there.
Well, Dr. Argan, and I agree. I mean, we're definitely codependent on each other for success. The reason we moved here from Avon Lake, property taxes were low, city income taxes were low. I appreciate that we have that, and we have a very good base of commercial businesses here that allows for that. Versus the Bay Village, a good example. They don't have any or very, very limited commercial. And so their property taxes are going to be very, very high. And the level of millage is going to be high. Even though there are $1 million homes on Lake Avenue, they don't have the commercial infrastructure that we have here. We do have a very good benefit. The city has done a very good job, absolutely. But as Mrs. Lazinski said, historically, it has really been more of a one-sided. I understand, not trying to go tit for tat and listing everything that they do for us and we do for them. But I've been in the city for more than 10 years. Mrs. Lazinski, she's been in here for more than as well.
40.
Yeah, it's not unknown that this is a one-sided relationship. So when I say, hey, help us out, I know you'll go to the mayor and council. And I'm sure you're going to do your best job to hopefully get their support for the next operating level we have. I know that. I know Mr. Craftsman. I know everybody's going to try and do that. My fear is, not even a fear, is that it just won't happen. That's the reality, because they haven't shown it in the past. And past is usually a pretty good indicator of the future. Not always.
Right, but I also don't know, is that really what it is? Is that something where we would say we would, hold up, even though we'd be made whole, but they would pay us, it would come through them. Are we saying that we are going to, that tax base you're talking about, one of the reasons that it's low is because they plan like this, because they look out and say that, hey, we can utilize this in 2045, even though he won't be the mayor and these folks won't be on council at that time. It's the fact that they are looking ahead for these opportunities, and it's one that's not going to impact us. And I guess to say that, to do this, you have to endorse this. I mean, because I don't want to make a promise, or I don't want to put that ultimatum to where, only vote yes if you promise to endorse something. But I just think there's so much more to the relationship than endorsement. And I do think we coexist. I do think we're codependent, and I actually think it's a good thing that they're looking ahead to 2045. And I don't know, to me, I just don't hold that emotional component, maybe because I haven't been here prior, but it's one that it just doesn't, other than the fact that I get your control with the money, I don't understand why we wouldn't.
Again, everyone's got real good thoughts on this, and I appreciate that. But what you just said, I'm trying to have this current board look out 40 years from now and be fiduciary responsible to the board that's going to be out there 47 years from now. That's what I'm looking for.
Sure.
Okay. The city's asking us for something, asking us to open up a contract, make a change, we're going to lose control of over $5 million a year for the next till 2071. We lose control of that dollars. All right. They could change it. They could change the agreement to make sure that we get our money from the county. I'm assuming, but I'm pretty confident. I remember my earlier response. Mr. Hopkins, when was it that the law passed so that the city could extend this TIF?
At the end of 2019, a law passed. Okay. So it's relatively new.
And when did they tell us about it?
We were approached.
So let me talk about that a little bit. And that's something that we're also very conscious of, because, talking like Mrs. Lazinski mentioned, is that things always haven't been the most, I think they were concerned about how it would be perceived as well. So I got a call directly from Mr. Colleen, He called me and said, hey, you know what, here's something that, we looked into, and I don't know the exact date, John. I'd have to think back about it. I had a lot going on in my mind.
Spring, fall, summer?
No. It was maybe a couple months ago.
Okay.
So he called and said, hey, we're looking at something, and he explained it to me. I'm not a big TIF guy. I don't know all the ins and outs. So he explained it to me, and he's like, I just want to give you a heads up. We're not, you'll be paid in full and all those sorts of things. And he was very forthcoming in it. And I said, well, I appreciate that. And I'll have Todd call Prashant, their finance guy. And then Todd and Prashant worked through it and had conversations. And then I had a meeting with Todd, the mayor, and Prashant. So that really was, I don't know the exact timeline of that, but that was the process through there. There was nothing in there where they were trying to, I don't know, they just were very above board about the entire thing is what I would say.
No, I guess my concern there was if this is so important to them, why did they wait for so long toward the end of the year to inform us of this, so that they're going to force us into making a decision here? I mean, if they
my understanding it was brought to them around that timeline of October. I think most of this happened in October. It was brought to them by their finance, not their finance director, but they use a third party for like investments and their municipal finances. And I think my understanding is that he brought it to them.
Well, as Dr. Goggin had said, I hope this board looks out 40 some years into the future for the students and the school board that's going to be running the district then, and make sure that they are in control of their funds versus not in control of their funds. That's just that simple. There's too much risk for us to do this.
And I just want to point out, Mr. Finucane, when you say control, I just need to make sure everyone is understanding this is not a situation where they control the $5 million on how we spend it.
Oh no,
I never. Your argument is, your argument is
give it how we get it. We don't get it right now. I mean that's the point, is that we rely upon them to give it to us, and then however we spend it, we spend it.
Mr. Hopkins, finish?
I have one last question.
Mr. Hopkins was finishing a statement, I believe.
It's okay. I was just saying that, we would maintain full control. And I understand and respect Mr. Finucane saying that the concern about the control coming through the city. But again, we would have a legally binding agreement that talks about how we would collect it. It's laid out in the resolution for you here under section 2E, payments to the school district during the extension period. So again, is there a change in risk between getting it from the city and the county? Yes. The risk does change from one political subdivision to another. But do I view that as a substantial risk that the district would be taking on? From my point of view as your treasurer, no, I do not.
From today's perspective, I would say the board needs to look out into the future. 20 years from now, we would be in control of the funds versus relying on the city.
Mrs. Lazinski?
Okay, they say they'll make us whole. Explain that, please, because that does not mean that we're going to get all this other 75% of the tax money that we're not getting now. Right?
Yeah, yes, it does. So
we will get that all back?
No, we do not get it all back. What happened is back in 2011 or so, the board agreed to a TIF agreement that the city did, and along with American Greetings and Crocker Park LLC, or whoever the other company involved, excuse me, whoever the other company involved is. And during that, there's an abatement. So there's multiple agreements here. There's a compensation agreement with the city, okay, that we receive that 25% of value. There's also agreements that the city has with these corporate companies. So I don't know the details of the agreement, but I'll give you an example of, let's say with American Greetings. American Greetings right now is not paying 100% of their property tax on full value of their $90 million facility. there is an abatement agreement which allows them to pay less. Okay. And then what happens is the city takes the lesser amount, pays the required portion to the school district, the 25%, and then the other money has to go to pay for the bonds that were taken out for the public's infrastructure improvements. The city is not pocketing the extra money. It's an abatement that's tied together, reducing the taxes of those corporations. Down the line, at the end of the current compensation agreement, which would end in somewhere around 2041, give or take, those agreements, those abatements would be gone. Those abatements would be gone. The companies would pay 100% of their property taxes. The city would take that into a separate fiduciary fund. We would be paid 100% of our portion, which right now is again around that 50 to 55%. They would then use the remainder of that, the other 45% or so, for public improvements. It doesn't go into their general fund. It's not going, I joke when I say, going to a vacation fund or something like that. It's the money, all the money that would be collected would either go to the school district at 100% to us or to do public infrastructure improvements.
Mr. Hopkins, I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but with the TIF extension, the companies that own the properties, Crocker Park LLC and AG, if those properties are sold, do those TIFs move along with the sale of the property?
Yes, it would be required to be, the new owners would have to take them on.
Right. So I'm thinking that that's a pretty good thing if I'm looking to try to sell my building or any of my property. If I own AG's building right now, all right, and I'm looking to sell it, and I say, hey, we got a TIF here, and we can get it extended for a period of time.
The extension doesn't benefit the companies in any way.
Still makes them a little bit more desirable.
They're paying 100% of their taxes, regardless of if at the TIF. In this situation of an extension on the TIF, they're still paying 100%. I think we get confused with a abatement, which means they're paying lesser in taxes, in the TIF. The TIF is, this financing agreement that allows a city to take out bonds to pay for public infrastructure.
Yes.
So I think financially what we're hearing is that it's not going to change what we would get in 2045, but I think what John is saying, it's who gives it to us. So the difference is in 2045, if we leave it as it is, first of all, if we leave it as it is right now, we don't get any more money. If we change it, we don't get any more money right now. It doesn't change the payment we're getting. If we leave it in 2045, we get 100%. If we let them amend it, we get 100% in 2045. The only difference is who's giving it to us. And, I guess that's the question I would have for Todd is, I don't think they legally can keep that money. I mean, it makes it sound like we have to ask them for it. Like we have to knock on City Hall's door and say, hey, can we have our $5 million? I mean, they have to give it to us, don't they?
They do. They would be holding it in trust on our behalf. We would be entitled to it. And again, just like if the county said, hey, we're not paying you, we would financially, legally go after the county or anyone else in that case. We have agreements with the board. I'm asking the board on the next resolution, or I'm sorry, 2 resolutions away, returning an advance from money that was paid for naming rights. We have different agreements with all kinds of people. If somebody doesn't live up to their end of the agreement, we always have, the court system that we could work through.
And I guess that's the main point I was trying to make as well is, we're talking about significant dollars out into the future for a future board. And yes, every agreement would be fantastic if everyone always adhered to the agreement. But unfortunately, people don't always adhere to agreements, in which why we have the legal system. Okay, so could you imagine, say in 20 years from now or 15 years from now, none of us are here, and for whatever reason, the city falls into a shortfall of funds, and they just can't afford to pay us our portion. We have to go to court, get a legal judgment to get those funds. So that's our only recourse. And
So if you look at,
I'm just saying that the reality is there's less risk if we were getting it from the county than if we were getting it from the city.
so if you look at section 2E, the payments to the school district during the extension period, they specifically state that the payments the city would be made would go into a public improvement tax increment equivalent fund established by the TIF ordinance. This would be a separate fund. It would not go into their general fund. It wouldn't be a situation that they didn't have enough money to pay us. If the company paid them, just like if the company pays their property taxes to this county, okay, if they receive the money, we would be entitled to it. It's not a situation where if they would be using it in their general fund and the city doesn't have enough money to pay it. Again, if you're talking something of that nature, you're looking at a fraud situation, but that could, heck, we've had that in the county already with some of our county commissioners. I mean, I think, again, the risk doesn't change. The amount of risk doesn't change whether it's the city or the county. It's just from a different political subdivision.
Further discussion.
Again, I sum it up with just saying, the money that the city gets in the TIF, two things happen to it. It pays us and it pays down the debt that the city has taken out. I believe they're bonds. Is that right? Okay. So if the city's falling short on funds to make their debt payment, all right, they only have so much money in that fund. Do you think they're going to pay their debt payment or default on it, or maybe delay paying the schools, or maybe just not pay the schools until they can get some other things cleaned up? That's my concern. There is, yes, the TIF has the money and it's in a separate account. Absolutely. The city still has control over it. And if they're going to make a payment on debt service, or they're going to have to make a payment to us, unfortunately, I know the city will prioritize the debt service. We would too.
So I think when we look at that risk, let's remember the only reason that they would be falling short is if the company was delinquent on their taxes. Okay, so if the company is delinquent on their taxes, they would have a shortfall. And you're right, they probably pay their debt. I'm sure they would. But if the company is delinquent, we wouldn't receive it from the county either. So the county only passes on what they collect. So if you're in a situation where a company is delinquent, or in our case, we have residential properties that could fall into delinquency. If people don't pay their taxes, there's a process to go through to collect that. And that often starts with a lien and can go to sheriff's sale and all kinds of other, processes in there. But this isn't a situation to where, again, the city's audited annually. You'd be talking about significant fraud, which is far more of a serious situation than, they just misspent it. You'd be talking about serious fraud that they would be doing. And again, if they didn't collect the money, you're right, we wouldn't collect it either. But if the company didn't pay it, we wouldn't collect it from the county. Again, the risk doesn't change. It only the political subdivision who passes it on to us changes.
So maybe if that happens, we put a lien on it, we can move out of Hilliard into American Greetings. That might be nice.
I get a corner office.
You won't be there.
Further discussion. Seeing no further discussion, roll call.
Here not.
Yes.
Lazinski,
No.
Fanukin,
Sorry, mute button again. No.
Kraft,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there a motion to approve treasurer's recommendations for B, C, and D?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Stoll,
Yes.
Pure Not,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lizinski.
yes,
Motion carries.
Dr. Goggins, Superintendent's recommendations.
Thank you. Mine are pretty simple. Resolution to accept gifts and donations from Michael Sarna from Chandler, Arizona, donating $500 to the Frank Zarna Memorial Scholarship Fund. We thank Mr. Sarna for the dedication or the donation to that scholarship. Letter B is a resolution to approve a facilitator for a resident educator. Catherine Wenzel is filling in for us as a long-term sub, and she's on the resident educator program, and she needs to have it completed, and Ms. Butcher has agreed to help her with that. And then we have, so this is, we're looking at our extended days. So I think I'd mentioned earlier when I was giving my presentation about our MOU on how we've kind of staged in, when people hit certain thresholds, we add, so for example, a coach hits a certain point, they get 50%, and they hit another point, 75%, another percent, 100%. What we're looking at here is we do have people within the district who we utilize extended days. And what we did was we kind of sectioned that off too. So I think we did half originally, and now we're approving the other extended days that they would be typically get for doing jobs outside of the typical workday. So that's what we're doing, is we're filling the rest of these, giving those, which then they would submit to the principal and be able to do. So we're just approving those. Letter D is a resolution, Catherine Wenzel, who I mentioned before, about being a long-term sub for us. This is actually us approving her being that long-term sub for us. Resolution to approve classified staff members. We are hiring more teacher assistants to assist with different type of things we need in the classroom. A lot of them, we're going to have Westlake Elementary School, Lee Burnison, Dover Intermediate. We can utilize them in the classrooms, whether it's virtually or in person or covering just some extended employees that we require. And then classified staff work hours. This is something that the board approves annually, and it states the number of hours that each position, each person is supposed to be working. Then a classified substitute, approving that person. And then supplemental contracts. So I mentioned this before, there's two of them. This one is the full year, and even though we're approving the full year, we still will follow what I mentioned before, to where if we shut down for a half a year, then the folks on this list would only get half the pay, right? So even though we're going to approve them being in this position, if their time in that position is adjusted in any way, we will adjust the pay. Same thing in letter I when it comes to the coaches. We are approving the coaches who are working with our winter sports, and what we're going to do is approve them now, and then based on how far they get, hopefully through the entire season, they would get paid appropriately. Last one is a resolution to approve a volunteer. We had a person, Ashley Gerhart, who was going to be volunteering with our TEALS program. It's a Microsoft Computer Science program at the high school, where we do bring in people from the workforce to be able to help with that class. And Scott Sigmund is going to be replacing Ashley Gerhart, and we need him approved. So other than that, I would say, if it's okay, 5A separate, and then 5B through J, if you're comfortable putting those together. I'm comfortable with you guys doing that as well. If you have any questions, let me know.
There a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation 5A.
So moved.
second,
Discussion will include, always thank you to those that contribute to the school. So thank you for this gift and this contribution. Further discussion? Roll call?
Stoll,
Yes.
Lizinski,
yes,
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Pure Not.
Yes.
Motion carries.
there a motion to approve superintendent's recommendations 5B through 5J?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Lizinski,
Yes.
Pure Not,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
At this time, we have board comments. Any board members care to comment at this time?
Well, a little disappointed in my 3 other board members. I guess the record will show 30 years from now who was looking for the future and who was looking for today. But here's one last point. And I think Mr. Goggin brought it up. 1 mil is 1.6 million. That's how much we give up every single year because the city convinced us to do the TIF for American Greetings. And American Greetings has not been in any way a supporter of the schools, and I would say even the community. So we were sold on an empty promise, and that is just not good for relationships. And it was the same players that put it together for the city then that are there now.
John, I'm not sure I 100% agree with that. I mean, you've got 2,000 employees working at AG. They pay some taxes. They obviously, eat at Crocker Park and spend some money in the city. So I wouldn't say we got nothing from that.
Well, I would agree. We all pay property tax. We all pay city income tax. The benefit and the driving force behind AG moving here was income tax for the city. And the only way they were going to move here as part of the agreement it stipulates is unless they got the TIF, they weren't moving. It says it in the agreement.
Right. But
So,
that's a common thing, right? I mean, we're not the only city that gives abatements. I mean, the city of Cleveland gives abatements on residential building, on homes and such.
absolutely. My nephew's got one for 30 years and it's transferable. He built a home down there in Cleveland. We're not Cleveland. Okay, that's the difference. We don't need to offer things like that. We bought income tax at the expense of the taxpayers. So we give up $1.6 million a year that goes to American Greetings. It's because they don't have to pay it. And that's 1 mil. So when we go out to ask for the voters for a 5 or a 6 mil in November, it could be 1 mil less. If the city made us whole instead of paying us 25%.
But you're assuming that AG would come here without that abatement, and that's probably not the case. They would have went to a city who would have given them that. So
And even if they didn't come here, the land would still have been developed, whether it be for residential or whether it be for other commercial. It's not like that land would just sit there in pasture. If you look at the homes that are over at Crocker Park, there's not a home over there that's under $500,000-$600,000. The original evaluation when the city calculated us as to what they were going to pay us at a minimum amount of payment was based on a home value of around $350,000. It was ridiculous. You dig into the information and you'll realize it was a bad deal for the schools. The land would have been developed, even if it was just residential. There's not a home in Westlake today that is built that is under $600,000 unless it's a small little condo or townhouse.
Further comments?
Yes. I was just thinking if we had our 100% taxes instead of 25%, we would have had the money to do the baseball fields and more. So, and I just don't want a board in the future wishing that we're sitting here wishing that in 2011, when none of us were on the board, that the board, wouldn't have done what they did. So I don't know. It was a very difficult decision.
Back to Mr. Stoll, though. There are TIFs, absolutely, in a variety of different cities. But unlike maybe 5 years ago or when this was put in place in 11, any new TIFs, almost the city makes the schools 100% whole. They no longer go to the schools and ask them to take a beating. All right. Any new TIF that's been presented makes the schools 100% whole or 25% whole. So yes, if there was an opportunity for us to do something and for the city to give back, then they should. But obviously it was voted down.
Further board comments? I'm going to move on to board items. And we have a first reading of a revised policy, right, Dr. Goggin?
Yes, and this is one that I will be able to send to you. And really all this is going to be is in, let's see, 2430 or 2431. Are you guys looking? I'm switching between
2431.
2431, perfect. There's a statement on there. It says, in addition to the eligibility requirements established by the Ohio High School Athletic Association, to be eligible for any interscholastic extracurricular activity, a student must have maintained a 1.5 grade point average during the grading period that they wish to participate. And so what's happened is the Ohio High School Athletic Association has waived that first part of eligibility. We do have students who are struggling in this format. And one of the things that the principal and athletic director has asked is if we can waive that 1.5 GPA if, and so what we would put in there is that we can allow people to participate if they attend study tables between the end of school and their sport. Now in the high school, I think this impacts about 5 students. It's not a large number of students, but we do have that time when the school day ends at 1 and their practices begin, I think around 3 or 3:30. So we would have time to work with them in there. So that would really be, that's what that particular policy is addressing.
Will this just be a temporary?
Yes, just for winter. We're not even extending it to spring, to be honest. So it would just be for winter. Second reading of policies, we went through it. I'll talk about the two. 2111 is parent and family involvement. It's really just adding something. I think it's one sentence about parents of students in title programs. And then policy 5200, the adjustments in there are modifications to compensate or adjust to taking attendance in a hybrid or virtual format. So that's really the only changes that they have in there. And then the other two are finance for Todd.
Yep, the other two are policy 6114 and 6325. They both involve our federal grants and some changes that the federal government has made into the spending procedures. Again, not very far off from what we typically are used to, and I have no concerns with it.
Is there a motion to approve board item 7C, the resolution to approve board policies?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Kurnat,
Yes.
Stoll,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lazinski.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And we have a notice that this is from Jen Darling regarding Elizabeth Shee's tenure at Westlake Porter Public Library. Resolution to approve trustee. Is there a motion to approve board item 7D?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call?
Lazinski,
Yes.
Stoll,
Yes.
Fanouken.
Ari, mute again. Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Pure not.
Yes.
Motion carries.
At this time, is there a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of an employer official?
So
So
move.
moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
To enter into executive session at 7:43 PM. Moved by Pure not, seconded by Fanouken. Pure not,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I can't figure out how to leave.